and all present here. Hello everyone, and today we are going to talk about the fraud detection technique. And here the fraud detection technique is a method used to identify, prevent and investigate the dishonest activity involving in money, data and assets. This technique help the organization detect fraud early and reduce financial losses. And how the fraud happens in companies, banks, government office and online platforms. The fraud cases financial loss and legal troubles and loss of trust here. And very important in forensic accounting and auditing. Why the fraud detection is important? First thing, to help the protect money and prevent the crimes and maintain the trust. Support legal actions. So early detection saves time cost and detections and reputations. Okay, the organization invests heavily in detections the systems, fraud detection system. Major fraud detection is nothing but it is data analytics that comes under the most possibility with the techniques and the trends, analyzes the ratio videos and the rational analysis the Beaufort's law and outer detections. And use possibility we are using the internal controls, how it has been controlled, segregations of duties, authorization control and approval limits. And here the segregation has been comes under the systematic method used to finalize, analyze, prove the financial frauds. The technique helps to forensic accounting fraud, financial manipulations, along with the irregular transactions that play roles in investigations audit. And here by proving the reliable financial problems. And the audit, what they will do, the audit technique is audit help to identify the fraud risk, internal audit, external audit and forensic audit. The audits looks for fake invoices, the manipulations, invoices, accounts, the missing records and everything. Okay. And here we are going with the whistleblow mechanism. Anonymous hotlines, email reports and suggestions brochure. Okay. And here we are going with the modern usage of the digital technology based techniques. The modern fraud uses the technology. So detection also uses the technology, the artificial machine learning, continuous monitoring. So the continuous monitoring happens means the transaction monitoring also it comes under the machine learning. So the artificial intelligence is involved in the detect fraud in the real time example. Okay. And here the role of the forensic accounting. How to investigate the suspicious transaction, and how to collect the evidence and interview the suspects and prepare the reports for the courts, and how it supports to manage decisions and legal proceeding, the fraud detection and the fraud prevention. How the fraud detection is separated from the fraud prevention. First thing, the fraud detection finds the fraud after it occurs. The fraud prevention stop the fraud before it occurs. So what happened, how it happens and how can we stop it? And both are equal and importance for our fraud detection techniques. Okay. And challenges in fraud detections. How it is going to give the challenge for it is not an easy, right? So we are moving the large data volumes, the complex transaction here, unskilled fraudsters and the false alarms, accurate to detect the system, to must accurate and update each and every detection system along with this. And finally, we are moving this history and versions. Early stage, the manual checking of the books and accounts, physical verification of the document. The corporate fraud era 1990s is an audit and financial ratio and structured investigation procedures. And modern versions, how it happens, the digital forensic and the data analytics and software tools, that AI and big data. This big data is moving with the legal and accounting statements. And manually, we can use along with the ledger verification and ERP systems, the databases and the forensic software. And here I have given the futures. The futures, it releases the financial records and data along with the employee software and digital tools and helps stop fraud before it spreads and finding out the acceptability in the codes. And finally, it reduces the error and fault recursions. And subtopics here, the fraud detections of the subtopics and the types of financial frauds and computer-based method and how it controls and fraud detection. And case, I have given a Combinator funded startup case and Zenefit HR solution company. It faced a non-complex and internal control failures, an employee license and the financial reporting. Finally, the Y Combinator used the startup for how the SaaS services is reported in the growth of the user and revenue. And here I have given the revenue, investors and the notice between the complainer reports and activity logins and authorizations records also. And ask the investigator to find out it. So the employee, it goes along with the group given in the logs and shows the outside approved working hours and internal controls are weak due to the rapid escalations, and we can claim the procedure oversights, and the task performed here is suspected frauds and the fraud detection techniques, and we are using the red flags to analyze the evidence used in the forensic methods, and finally we can control the frauds, and what the failure has been done we can control along with that for the growth of the company. And step 1, how to identify the fraud type. First thing, we want to compare the fraud, internal control manipulation. Second thing, apply the fraud deductions and activity performed in the examination to verify it. Okay. And third thing, we want to detect the red flag. It is a duplicate complication record and unauthorized system access here. And finally, approval trials has been done and the evidence verification. How we are going to cross-check the system of the HR and the records, and employee access the times with the authorizations level, documentations with issuing the authority. And finally, I'm going to conclude this fraud detection techniques with the internal process manipulations, and this will give me the corrective action and legal completion review. So final outcome, the overview of the investigation and review with the rapid growth to lead the weakness and employees, and early detection how it's going on, legal penalties and investigation loss. So real life example is banking and loan fraud deductions and the claim verifications along with the digital fraud cases. So implication expenses during the forensic accounting for the company. And here I have given the mind map, that is data analytics, digital forensic, what we have saw, and ratio and trends, what you have go along with that different law, with nothing but the red flags and everything. And here the CAT score and the whistleblowers and everything. I have given the puzzles here, so you can go through, and the tutorial video also have forwarded here, you can check. And tomorrow's interaction is effective information gathering methods. What is an effective information gathering method? It collects the accurate, reliable informations that interviews, the document reviews and observations has been handled inside the execution. So the information gathering helps to identify the fraud and verify the facts what happens in the investigation. Finally, we ensure the evidence is credible, relevant and legal administrations. So thank you all.